Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Welcome to another episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and films they release. We are starting our new miniseries on Lionsgate from 1998 to 2005. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And today we'll be covering Last Night from 1998/1999 for Canada in 1998 and the US in 1999, but before that, we're going to talk about the history of Lionsgate's film, at least up to 2005. I don't need to get into the Hunger Games of it all. But Lionsgate's film, the story starts with Cinepix. It was founded by John Dunning and Andre Link in 1962. It was based in Montreal. It was a Canadian independent motion picture company that released English and French language films in Canada and the US. Initially a distribution company, Cinepix's first production was the 1969 nice erotic drama Valerian, the what is it? Valerian.
City of a Thousand Planets?
City of a Thousand Planets, yeah. The erotic drama version of that, which earned $1 million at the box office, which in 1969 was like, that could like rival Endgame's box office, I think. Cinepix produced early works from David Cronenberg, like Shivers and Ivan Reitman, Meatballs. The company also distributed art house films, including the grunge rock documentary Hype, which I need to watch, Vincent Gallo's Buffalo 66, which we are going to cover that because they produced it, but Lionsgate bought Cinepix by that time and they released it. So, and Sick, the life and death of Bob Flanagan's super masochist.
I've heard that's very tough to watch, but good.
I'll watch it. Yeah. I only know Bob Flanagan because he's in the Happiness and Slavery music video by Nine Inch Nails, which is also a rough music video to watch. Lionsgate Entertainment Corporation, LGEC, was formed in 1997 by Frank Giestra, a banker. LGEC purchased Cinepix and kept its leadership. Cinepix was named Lionsgate Films. That's spaced out. Lions, space, gate, space, films. Before they were just like, get them spaces out of here and drop the films.
Drop the apostrophe. It's cleaner. Or
yeah. Yeah, I was doing a thing. I was like, wait, is it apostrophe S? Does the lion own the gate? No. It's the gate with the lions. They renamed it Lionsgate Film on January 13th, 1998. LGEC also purchased Vancouver-based North Shore Studios, which became Lionsgate Studios. In June 1998, LGE purchased International Movie Group, which film library included Jean-Claude Van Damme's Kickboxer. I love how Wikipedia was just like, that's what they got.
Anyone seen that one? I haven't seen that one.
I have not. Gustra left the firm in 2000. That same year, John Felthimer, I am the worst with names, why do I have a podcast, became CEO and Michael Burns became vice chairman. They decided to focus on the profits of videos and DVDs and began buying struggling firms that controlled large libraries. The two most notable acquisitions were Trimark Holdings, which had 650 titles in 2000, and of course, Artisan Entertainment in 2003. The Trimark purchase also included Cinema Now, a broadband streaming website where Lionsgate could feature its own movies. I'm sure it took like 9 hours to stream that shit. But yeah, it's not as the story of the early Lionsgate is not as rip-roaring as Artisan, where it went through like 9 different versions before it became Artisan.
It also had like off behind the scenes murders or something like that.
Like the dude who used to run like live entertainment was the father of the Menendez brothers. Just wild shit like that. This is just like, we just bought a bunch of companies. Here you go. Let's see. Before we get into Lionsgate again, does anybody have, when they think of a Lionsgate movie, what do you think about? I think about both Bret Easton Ellis movies, American Psycho and Rules of Attraction, which we will both be covering. So when I think about Lionsgate, I think about that. What about y'all?
I think about the horror specific later Lionsgate logo where it's like Yeah, when it'd be like, it's
It's
red,
red.
to show it's bloody and horrifying. I feel like that was like, was that because it was Lionsgate who ended up picking up Cabin in the Woods, right? Like, I feel like that's maybe when I saw that in
Yes.
the trailers.
Yes.
Yeah.
They also picked up, I mean, we're going to get into this, but Saw. But I also will admit,
Right.
Saw, I remember just associating with twisted pictures, and it had like the barbed wire
Barbed
around
wire
the
and
nail.
the nail.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I do remember LGF. And then,
Cabin
if it was horror
Fever, I
movie.
remember being one.
Of course,
Around
of
2003, which, yeah, we're going to cover that.
Yeah, stupid me naming movies we won't cover, like Cabin in the Woods. Yeah. No, it's fine. It's fine.
Oh no, that's when it was Lionsgate. We don't. That's when they dropped the films. That's when I dropped off. I was sick of it. Anyways, let's get into Last Night from 1998. Premiered at Cannes. Still not sure. It's Cannes. Okay. May 1998, where it won the Award of the Youth for Foreign Film. At TIFF in September 1998, where it won Best Canadian First Feature Film. It dropped in theaters in Canada October 23rd, 1998. Also, one weekend in the U.S. at this time.
Only one weekend?
I don't know. And then that's what the number says. And then it dropped in the U.S. officially November 5th, 1999. In the U.S., it opened to 8 theaters and expanded up to 28 theaters. The budget, I found it was either $2 million or $2.5 million. I also saw $3.5 million. So
Yeah, McKellar said in an interview with IndieWire at the time that the movie was coming out that the budget was 2.2 million Canadian dollars, which is maybe $1.5 million in America.
okay.
Yeah.
Opening weekend, it did 48 grand. Domestic gross of 591 grand, and I could not find the overall gross. Top 5 films that weekend. Once again, we're talking about The Bone Collector. We're talking House on Haunted Hill, The Bachelor, The Insider, and The Best Man, which sounds like a fucking what's the thief, the lover, the wife, and it The Bachelor, The Insider, and The Best Man.
I shouldn't be saying this since I've barely seen any of those movies, but I would assume based on their reputation that one of those films is not like the others. Because
The Bachelor,
yeah, exactly. No, the Insider fucking rules. I watched like half of House on Haunted Hill in like a hotel room when nothing else was on.
It's watchable. It's watchable. I remember I rewatched that after I watched The Haunting for the first time, and watching anything after The Haunting makes everything go down smooth because The Haunting is insufferable.
The Haunting is awful. It's so boring.
It's so boring. It made me dislike Lily Taylor. Like, that's how bad it is.
Oh, it's such a God damn it! I love Lily Taylor so much, and it's not her fault. It's not her fault.
No.
But yeah, it is funny too. I remember like going to the movies in the summer of 1999 and seeing like The Haunting got like the biggest theater on opening weekend and being like, oh, I will, 8-year-old me was like, I will never see that. My goodness, too scary for me. And then, of course, like a few years later, and then a few years later, like as a teenager, I was like, oh God, this sucks. Like,
I have rewatched the clip of. I have not seen the movie. I will watch it because I think part of me wants to think, Jan de Bont, there's still a good filmmaker in there.
That's the other thing. It's Speed still holds up. Like,
yeah, the movie's it's so much fun.
Yeah.
But with The Haunting, I've just seen the clip where it's Owen Wilson getting his head cut off.
That's the only violence in the movie.
The only clip worth watching of that entire fucking movie. And it's not like it has a good cast. Liam Neeson, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Lily Taylor, Owen Wilson. And yet it, like, I want to say an hour of them is just walking around an abandoned house. Like,
yeah. And then it's just an hour of Lily Taylor screaming because her bed's trying to kill her.
She screams the ghosts away. That's what I remember about that movie. Is like Owen Wilson gets decapitated, and then Lily Taylor has some ancestral history or something. I don't remember.
Something.
But yeah, but then she's able to scream the CGI ghosts away.
Spoilers.
Yeah,
Come on.
Jesus
I was gonna watch
Christ.
it.
Oh God! Spoilers for a 23-year-old movie
that sucks.
Yeah, that really sucks. I blindly bought that movie with a copy of What Lies Beneath. It was like one of those 2 for $15 deals.
That's a good movie.
Yeah,
What Lies Beneath is awesome.
I remember that poster used to scare me as a kid. I was like, what is that hand doing out of the tub, man?
Out of the tub? Yeah.
Yeah.
Pfeiffer in that movie, and Ford. Fun movie.
Yeah.
They don't make them like that anymore. It got shit on at the time, but like that was a big, huge hit in the middle of July of like 2000 or something like that, and kind of sad.
It's like the same year as Castaway as well for Zemeckis.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
funny.
Well, I remember that also being a big thing that people were like, we thought Zemeckis lost it with What Lies Beneath, but nope, never mind. 6 months later, Castaway comes out. He's still got it. I'm like, look, I have my issues with a ton of Robert Zemeckis movies, but those are pretty good. Like,
Pretty
why
good.
do people like have a problem with one and not they're two totally different
They're
movies?
both
I
good.
get it, but they're both
But-
technical marvels that don't get made today.
Don't they both like have like super spoilery trailers where it's like what
Yes.
Lies Beneath reveals Harrison
Castaway
Ford's role of
just
the movie?
Yeah, spoilers
Yeah,
for
it's like-
Castaway, but it shows him off the island afterwards.
It didn't matter though. That showed
It's still a
that
good
he
movie,
was-
but it is weird.
Yeah.
That is, but it is funny that you bring that up too. That like, oh, it reveals that Harrison Ford's the killer in one of them, and that Tom Hanks gets off the island. People didn't care; they still showed up. Didn't matter if it was the
There you
summer
go.
or Christmas.
How does he get off though? It's just like
Yeah.
I don't know. He just like gets on a piece of wood. Like what do you expect? Number one song in the U.S. this week. You'll never guess it. It's "Smooth" by Santana. Number one song in Canada this week. You'll never guess it. "Mambo Number 5" by Luke Bacon.
Oh God.
And then the box office for Dogma, it's the same exact one from Felicia's Journey. So,
wow.
yeah. Last night follows various citizens of Toronto as they anxiously await the end of the world at midnight, while Patrick Wheeler, played by Don McKellar, also the director and writer, braces for his fate. He meets Sandra, played by Sandra Oh, the wife of a businessman who is in... That's kind of spoilery. Meanwhile, Patrick's friend Craig Zalway embraces a hedonistic approach to the apocalypse. Kind of a bad plot synopsis, but there was like kind of spoilers in there that I had to work around, but like I said, directed and written by Don McKellar, and starring him as Patrick Wheeler, his first directed film prior to this, where he was known as an actor mostly. The Juster in 1991, Exotica in 1994, When Night is Falling in 1995, and the same year as this, he is in and co-wrote The Red Violin, which we'll be covering in this miniseries. After this, he's in Existence, Clean in 2004, and Scott Pilgrim. After this, directing and writing wise, Child Star in 2004, The Grand Seduction in 2013, and Through Black Spruce.
Spruce, yeah.
Okay.
The Grand Seduction, I don't know if it's entirely notable to mention it, but that's a remake of like a French-Canadian movie from like the early 2000s, and then Through Black Spruce is like a book adaptation about like indigenous characters, which that was like a thing that people were like, ooh, like a white guy directing the story. But it sounds like he like was pretty good about consulting with indigenous voices, like to actually like make sure that movie like got to, I don't know. Through Black Spruce is actually a pretty interesting movie. It's very tonally different than some of the other stuff they've done. Like Grand Seduction's like kind of like a goofy sort of like fish out of water comedy, and this movie is like kind of like a Last Night's a dark comedy with like very dramatic, heavy sections and everything. And then Through Black Spruce is just like a straight thriller. Yeah, interesting guy.
Yeah. Also, prior to last night, he directed both David Cronenberg and Tracy Wright, which I did not know it was his life as like longtime partner, and then got married, and then she died of cancer the same year. In a short film called Blue in 1992, so I need to watch that. Sandra Oh plays Sandra. Prior to this, The Diary of Evelyn Lau and Double Happiness in 1994. 80 episodes of Arliss. How do you pronounce that TV show with the $2 ?
Yeah, I think it is Arliss. That's where Don McKellar sort of noticed her. It was like a sitcom that she was on, and then he said like, "Oh, this is like not exactly the best material, but like I see dramatic potential for her like to be in something," and then that's why he cast her in this movie.
Yeah, she was on that from 1996 to 2002. She was in Bean in 1997.
Oh my gosh,
Mr.
I don't
Bean
remember in that.
movie.
Yeah. Same year, once again, she's also in Red Violin, and she was in Permanent Midnight. After this, Sideways in 2004, 220 episodes of Grey's Anatomy from 2005 to 2014, Catfight in 2016, and Killing Eve from 2018 to 2022. Also starring Sarah Polley, David Cronenberg, and Callum Keith Rennie.
There's a lot of overlapping actors who have collaborated with one another that I did appreciate just watching in this directorial debut, which means, at least to me, that at this point in time, and for the most part, even knowing what they've done now in the year 2022, are all still good friends and collaborators as artists, which was very nice to see that they've been in touch with each other for so long and care enough about, their own artistic aspirations. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned McKellar, like, when we talked about Felicia's journey, about how he was kind of the mediator between, like, the sort of seemingly one-sided beef between, like, Adam McGowan and David Cronenberg. Is like, why didn't you give my movie the top prize at Cannes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but
Don
yeah, and
McKellar was in Devil's Knot, right?
Was he actually?
I never saw
haven't
Devil's
seen that movie. I haven't seen that movie in 8 years, so
I'm
like it's been a
too
while.
scared. I love Adam McGowan so much, and I know that's one of his supposed stinkers. I will give it a fair shake, but I am too scared to see that one. As someone who also enjoyed some of the documentaries that I saw about the West Memphis 3, just too scared.
Yeah, I also think after like watching 4 like 9-hour documentaries about them, I was like, I don't need a dramatization, and also one that's apparently not good. I think I'm good about these boys.
Yeah.
Quick trivia: this film was the result of the director Don McKellar's invitation to participate in a challenge to make a movie about the imminent millennium. The project, called 2000 Seen By, involved 10 filmmakers from 10 different countries, films such as Hal Hartley's Book of Life, and The Hole from, I think, 1998, 1999, I believe. I do want to see that. Instead of making a movie that McKellar felt might date itself too quickly, he opted to make it about the end of the world rather than just the end of the millennium, and the part of Sandra was written specifically for Sandra Oh.
Well, the other thing too is, another actor that he wrote with in mind was Jean-Pierre Bujold, who he says like had like a very much reminded him of the energy of French teachers that he kind of admired somewhat romantically as a kid, and also like seemed like and like sort of had a crush on her like as an actress, like when he was like growing up and whatnot. But also he talks about how sorry if I'm coming in with the trivia, but
no, I'm done. So go ahead.
Yeah, so it was supposed to be an hour long, but then he said this is from IndieWire. He said that doesn't, their payment, it was originally going to be shown on the CBC, I think is like they were going to show the movies, but then he said that doesn't really work in English-speaking territories because they're not just going to show subtitled films, and there's no place for 1 hours like that except maybe PBS, and then they wouldn't have the money anyway. And then he says it was easier to finance a feature than it was to get an hour for television because people could understand that you can make some money off of a feature. Uh-huh. And so we linked up with this company called Rhombus Media, and then the CBC and Telefilm and other distributors were involved. And a couple of other things too is like there's like one of the notable images in the movie is like the streetcar where like Arsene Kanjian and her kid are just like waiting for just, I guess, like kind of not used to like the way of the world moving and everything. That the streetcar was on the poster for some of the movies, but then for some of the release territories. But then when he was trying to market it in France, apparently the French people were saying like, no, we can't have a streetcar on the poster. It looks too much like Poland, and we want to make it look like North America. So that's like kind of a funny bit of trivia.
Wow.
So weird. Yeah, I didn't know. I was just like, that woman on the bus looks familiar, and it's a Goyen's wife. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the girl with her is just like says something about she's 12, and I was like, you look like 23.
Oh.
She didn't look 12, okay? But any more interesting stuff you found, Bryden?
It was mainly just like, how like freaking prolific Don McKellar was, like how just how much stuff he did. Like he talked about how he had his own theater company, how he wrote like he also did like there was like this show that I really want to check out where he co-created a show around the time that Last Night was coming out called Twitch City.
Yeah.
It was a sitcom with like Molly Parker, some of the kids in the Hall
her.
Cast members, Callum
Fuck
Keith
yeah.
Rennie, and it's just like I want to see this right now. But then he also wrote like a Tony Award-winning musical called The Drowsy Chaperone. He created some other TV shows. He hosted a CBC radio show miniseries about television and pop culture. He also was an actor on the show called Slings and Arrows, which is one of like Rachel McAdams' early breakouts.
Huh.
Yeah, he's like just like one of those guys who like has just like done a lot of stuff and seems to be pretty good at a lot of it. And also like very willing to like, and also pretty modest. I think like he talks about how like it was like kind of uncomfortable like directing his own performance and everything, especially like with like shooting this on like where he was able to like look at the videotapes and look back at his own performance. He would get very self-conscious, but then also like trying to like in the edit like focus on the other actors. Like he said like what was kind of interesting about he showed the scene with like the voicemail near the end with Sandra Oh and how like a lot of the focus was on her and like trying to give her the spotlight. So he talks about how like the collective idea is sort of like a very key idea in like Canadian filmmaking. So it's like I don't know, he just seems like a pretty good a pretty generous artist, which is like very nice, and it also helps that his movies are very good. From what I've seen at least.
My old my former boss at the Coolidge Corner Theater, Nancy Campbell, who runs IFF Boston, has told me about this film for years. Told me about how they were able to get Don McKellar to attend the festival at one point, and had nothing but just utter praise for what a wonderful man he is, what a wonderful person he is. Just like had nothing but just the most enthusiastic compliments to give him as fans of his work too. Yeah, so
apparently pretty much all of Twitch City is on YouTube, so check it out.
Sick.
Yeah, somebody seemed to upload it a few months ago, so hell yeah.
Oh, and the other thing about like just sort of like swapping collaborators, I mean, this movie has like a lot of cameos by like actual like famous filmmakers, including like or Canadian filmmakers like David Cronenberg, Francois Girard, Bruce McDonald, who McKellar had written for, but also it's shot by this guy Douglas Koch, who later went on to shoot Crimes of the Future, which is Cronenberg's most recent movie, which is really cool.
One of the best movies of this year, 2022.
Still haven't seen it, so I'm a bad Canadian, but
I will say it's one of the movies released this year. That's true.
I saw it twice in 3 days. I loved it so much. And McKellar's in it. He's great. He and Kristen Stewart are partners in that movie. They work for the National Organ Registry.
Who else is in it? Scott Speedman. Yeah.
Scott Speedman's also
Fuck yeah.
It was my favorite part. Yeah.
Coming up on the last night on the planet, and you're listening to CKRT.
Good evening. I'm calling from the gas company. Rest assured that we will do our utmost to keep the gas flowing right until the end.
So you're going to a party?
You have to take life in your own hands.
I'm surprised you could come. I thought, what?
You're being obnoxious.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Look what Santa brought you last night.
It's not really Christmas today, is it, Mom? Would it hurt you to play along just once?
Get out of the way!
My car got attacked.
What I do find pathetic is people saying as soon as they hear that the world is ending, they rush out and try and hook up with someone like it was closing time at Studio 54. I want us to be together. It's not like I wanted sex with you, but I do feel like I like you.
Tell me something to make me love you.
Don McKellar, Sandra Oh, Callum Keith Rennie, Sarah Bally, David Cronenberg, Genevieve Bujold.
Bon voyage.
Party like there's no tomorrow. Last night.
I just don't want to risk having bad sex today.
Okay, initial thoughts. Bryden, this is your second time seeing it, so what did you think on this rewatch, and what did you think initially?
I guess I didn't like this movie at the first. I didn't like this movie when I first saw it a few years ago, and I guess it was like, I mean, I watched both times I watched it on my laptop because I watched it through my school's like local library and whatnot. And first time I had to watch it was for a Canadian cinema class, and it was like a movie set in Toronto. We were talking about like Toronto set movies, and I think this will be the third time I'm telling this to you guys tonight, but the first time I'm telling it, I'm like, the three movies we had to that we could choose from to watch were Patricia Rozema's I've Heard the Mermaid Singing, this movie last night, and then Adam McGowan's Chloe, which does not really seem to fit genre-wise with any of those movies, other than just being set in Toronto.
Can I ask, did your professor have a reason for Chloe being the Egoyan film that they selected?
I should have asked. Yeah, like obviously the adjuster they could have chosen, because that one like definitely takes place in Toronto. But
Exotica, The Sweet Hereafter, like there's a handful. I mean, I think Chloe's fun trash. I love Adam McGowan, as we mentioned on the Felicia's Journey episode, but that is a weird one to pick out of.
Maybe they wanted to spice it up a little bit with like some genre flair, because sometimes we were watching like art house movies, I guess, for that class. So like maybe they just wanted to, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I maybe just like wasn't in the mood for like on the first time of like the movie is like a very odd like acting style with like a lot of the movies. I mean, we kind of like were disagreeing in the chat about like the energy of some of the performances, but I think that's kind of the point where everyone is like kind of, well, not kind of, they are like pretending and sort of play acting throughout the whole movie as like a way of like coping with like this just like kind of incomprehensible tragedy that is about to like fall upon them. And, you know, they all like do it in kind of like weird, sort of stilted ways. And I think there's still like a couple of performances in this that I don't entirely gel with. Like I feel like Kyle McKeith Rennie, I feel like it is like just kind of stilted to the point where like it kind of throws off the rhythm of a scene.
I mean, the movie's only 90 minutes, but his part, I'm just like, get it out of here.
And yeah, and I also think that like the movie, what I really liked about the movie this time around was like sort of the fleeting moments of compassion, where it is like all these different kind of like grace notes that are coming in unexpectedly as like the world is sort of descending into chaos, where like it will be like, whether it's you know, like Don McKellar having the scene with Geneviève Bujold where like Don McKellar has the farewell to her in French, and like it just lingers on her, and like you get the sense of this woman having like this whole interior life just in like that one zoom in close up on her, like as the doors are closing. It's beautiful. And I think McKellar's really good at the way he orchestrates the chaos too, with like, you know, so much detail in the backgrounds, when it's like David Cronenberg like driving through the streets and you see like there's a couple making out in the background as like his car's passing, but you also see a bunch of people like just race into the frame and rush them and attack them. So it's like the flurry of emotions as people were dealing with it in dealing with the trauma of this in different ways is actually, I think, you know, pretty understandable, even if it is like very heightened. But I did the Callum Keith or anything. I think the whole that subplot didn't really work for me. I think it starts out on such a shitty note where it is like he is fetishizing a black woman, where it is like he wants to have, and I get that like we're not supposed to be liking this character, but like the reaction where she's shown to be into it and it is meant to be kind of this sexy scene, it just kind of like, I don't know, there's something icky about it. And like also like kind of, I don't know, the movie having like those grace notes of compassion, which I like in other parts of the movie, it feels, I don't think it quite feels earned in this particular context. So like that's the one, I think that coming so early in the movie, maybe like on the first viewing kind of just like threw me. And then having problems with Rennie's performance, like that kind of like the whole thing's maybe cast a pall over it. But I don't know, I really liked it. I also love the look of this movie too. I mean, like where it is like so like the overwhelming like sort of like sunlight and everything, where every scene is like has kind of like this white mist over everything with like the steam rising up from the streets, but also like just that sunlight where it is like kind of like weirdly oppressive and distinctive, and also like the weirdness too of like how everyone's kind of losing it, and like but night never falls. Yeah. And I think there are also like are like a lot of really good like the tonal balance too, where there will be these moments of like real despair, but then also like just like kind of oddball comedy and everything. Like David Cronenberg, like there's just like the whole like conflict of his character where he is like a pretty nice guy, but then also you're like, what the fuck is this guy's problem that he's making this woman work on the last day on Earth? Like that's like totally sadistic and everything.
That's what I did like about it. It was just like, yeah, if it was the last day on Earth, motherfuckers would be like so conditioned to still have to work.
That's yes, I like that, and that's there with the Arsene Kanji, just like thinking, well, like of course someone's gonna come on and drive the streetcar, like it just trying to hold on to some sense of some semblance of normalcy and routine for sure. That's great. And I also love the ending of this movie is like absolutely incredible, where it is like this great moment of intimacy, and the whole movie has like a lot of like really kind of noisy moments, whether it's like you know, diegetic needle drops, or like, you know, kind of like the crashing and like sort of like background noises of like all the chaos going on in the city, or dialogue. And then I think, and without getting into the spoilers yet, like the fact that like you have like this very intimate moment just like with like one sound effect that you can hear, it just like it makes the emotions like hit so much more. So yeah, I was kind of stunned by how much I like this more on like the second viewing. I don't even know if I can pin my finger on why like my reaction was different, but it just proves the importance of rewatching things and the pleasant surprise of just like finding new reactions to movies. That's kind of a lovely thing about doing this show. So yeah. I'll end it there. I want to let everyone else talk about what they think of this movie.
Well, that's why our next miniseries is just going to be doing the same artisan movies again and seeing what we think a year later.
Yeah, it turns out Ringmaster is
still
like
bad.
a trenchant social commentary.
Be like, I guess I'll give House of the Dead a star instead of a half star, and be like, we did it. We came back. We grew as people. No. Charlie, initial thoughts?
Yeah, so I watched this movie today. I've had a busy week, and I was just like, I will admit, for our next episode, I watched Dogma first. It was easier for me to get that one out of the way because I'd seen it before. Had a very, very busy week. I was not expecting, like, I will say, I have a few friends, including who I mentioned, my former boss Nancy Campbell, who I love beyond words, has been recommending this movie to me for years. I've always liked Don McKellar as an actor, especially in Exotica, other Goyen and Cronenberg collaborations. I don't know why I never really sought it out until it was now assigned to us as a to cover on this podcast. This movie really, really snuck up on me, and I think it might be. There have been a ton of movies that I've loved that we've covered on this podcast, but most of the ones that I've loved I've seen before. This is easily, out of the ones I've seen as a first time viewing, the one that, like, I think in our several months of covering this podcast, this is easily the best first time viewing I've had on this podcast. I think it does fall into certain things that I'm a sucker for, which are apocalyptic movies. Movies in which people are repressed and fail to connect with one another, especially in times of extreme distress or catastrophe. The fact that we have been surviving a global pandemic for the past 2.5 years, I genuinely wonder what I would have thought of this movie if I saw it pre-pandemic, but seeing it post-pandemic, I shouldn't even say post-pandemic. The pandemic's not over, people. But yeah, like
post-lockdown?
Even then, like, it's... I found most of the first half of this film to be very darkly funny and cathartic in that way in which we put on masks in order to cope with collective trauma. And then but I was always hooked by it, but I found it very amusing and very funny. And then by like the last half hour of this thing, I was like choking up. And I watched this before I drove to a shift at work, and by the time I stupidly timed it up to the point that by the time the movie was over, I had to get in my car, and I was like tearing up just thinking about it, just because of those final few minutes. I also am a sucker for... I genuinely like ensemble pieces, so the fact that this film is, even though it's 90 minutes, is generous enough to give us multiple perspectives on how various people with various forms of emotional maturity and lack thereof deal with something like this, also in terms of their age and race and all that. I understand what both of you are saying about the character of Craig, played by Callum Keith Rennie. I will say that is the one snag, is that is his introduction, and it sucks that that's how you're introduced to him, and that he's just basically doing this sexual fetish stuff. And but at the same time, I think there is some truth to him trying to connect with people and using sex and labeling people based on archetypes and stereotypes in a way that is him trying to find some sense of truth in the most in a way that is like how we're supposedly supposed to connect to people. But like, I mean, anyone who's been on a dating app or Grindr or whatever knows that like sometimes that shit just happens, and then you're just like, okay, bye, and then just like, oh god, I feel worse than I did before. And that's honestly what I took away from that character, is that he's like so trying to find connection with anybody just based on certain things like that. It's what I loved about Sandra Oh, where she's so nakedly vulnerable, and is just like, and we'll get into certain plot descriptions, I shouldn't get too far into it, but the way it examines certain people and how they cope with it through humor and through pathos, I found to be incredibly moving. I also agree with you, Brad, and I love that everything looks so bright. I mean, and that there's no exposition to the way in which the world's ending, or how the world's ending, or why it's ending. It's just, it's happening. It's not about how or why it's happening. It's about how people respond to it. I find that sort of thing to be utterly fascinating. It's why I love certain shows like The Leftovers, where they're like, 2% of the world's population disappears. The show's not going to examine that. It's going to examine their confusion and the fact that they will have no answers, but it's just going to focus on how we cope and how we interact. And as someone who has wrestled with depression and anxiety my entire life, I guess that's just something that I personally find fascinating, especially in something like this. And I agree with you that I kind of side tangent there. What I meant to say was I agree with you that I love the way the film looks and that it's so white. I think of like so many post-apocalyptic movies or soon-to-be apocalyptic stories just looking so gray and dirgy
100%.
and ashen. Like, I couldn't help but think about, it's a much different type of story, but why I loved Cormac McCarthy's The Road as a novel and why I hated the film, because the novel is so vague about what the end of the world will look like, and then the film just gave it this really like stereotypical, like everything was on fire and ashen and stuff like that, and it's like that's not what makes the end of the world fascinating to me. But it also is making it kind of like the opposite of that, in that everything is so bright and in your face. And as someone who's dealt with like, I can't even get out of bed today, to just go outside and like there are no clouds and the sun's just blaring in your face, and the way that society treats you is like, the sun is out, be happy, kind of like that kind of abrasive brightness just sometimes makes you feel worse, and how it's so overwhelming. And it also, like, I think certain films have tried that look and have done it really badly. Like, I don't know if any of you saw that movie Blindness with Julianne Moore.
Which Don McKellar's also in, isn't he?
Like, is he? Oh, shit.
I think he wrote it. No?
No way.
Oh my fucking god. Oh, Jesus
I think it's also
Christ. He
set
did.
in Canada, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Oh god. I'm so embarrassed that nope, you're right. He did. Jesus. I blame that on the direction, though. Don McKellar wrote the screenplay. He's innocent. Maybe he was just like, the director was like, maybe based on the way your movie looked, I can do that. But that's like such an ugly, grim look at humanity when a certain apocalyptic
from the director
event
of
happens.
City of God and
City of
Two
God,
Popes.
which I think was a fluke. Oh god.
He had the thing that's forgotten about that movie is he had a co-director, Katja Lund, and I don't think she's worked on anything else since that movie.
Yeah.
But,
oh my god. Oh god. That's embarrassing that I just was like, oh right, he wrote that. It's the opposite of this movie, where Blindness is just such a fucking monotonous, grim, ugly, bleak look at humanity without any kind of like sense of lightness to it. It uses that same visual style and has no interesting compositions and is just interested in wallowing in misery. This one I feel like does have as upsetting as certain images are, it never feels like it's fully giving into nihilism at the same time, if that makes any sense. So I feel almost bad that I just watched this movie and have been digesting it for the past less than 12 hours, because I feel like I still have so many thoughts and feelings that are stewing in my mind. But this film really, really took me aback in terms of how much it surprised me, and just kind of knocked me out. So
yeah. And it's impressive that it juggles like all these different emotions and tones, and like gives you like a full sense of like lived in like sort of interiority with most of the characters, and does it all in like 90 minutes, and it moves by like pretty quickly. I would say like it's like I found this second watch like surprisingly brisk, where I was like, oh wow, I only have like 20 minutes left. Yeah.
Especially compared to another movie we're going to be talking about that you might get next
week. Yeah, intensely. Yeah.
I thought this was mostly fine. I was really into it up into whenever McKellar and Sandra Oh are hanging out and whatnot, and then she leaves, and then it becomes more McKellar and Callum Keith Rennie's movie for a little bit, and I was just like, it immediately just dropped for me, and then it never really got back up, and I was just like, I just want a movie where Don McKellar and Sandra Oh are just walking around the streets trying to break into cars for like another 45 minutes. But
yeah, well, she comes back.
Yeah, but
it's not that long, I don't think, the Rennie thing. I think that's just more a testament to Rennie's performance dragging down the movie's pacing for like maybe 5 or 10 minutes.
It's like 20 minutes that she's gone, because he has to go to her house to, well, we won't get into the plot, but anyway, yeah.
And I feel like you cut back to her too. I think you do. Like the movie's like constantly like cross-cutting between like different characters at different points.
But yeah, I do love the look of it. It's very inspired to have what I'm gonna assume is the sun is coming to the earth, and that's why it's bright out. But also, I think it's mostly a low budget thing to be like, oh, we can just shoot it all during the day and it'll be fine. And be like, well, I wish it wasn't so bright out or whatnot. So it's like the people in the movie know, and we're gonna assume that also because it ends with brightness. I don't know. I wish we had Kiefer Sutherland explaining what's actually happening at the end of the world, like in Melancholia. But no, I'm kidding. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I do dig the look of it. There's a lot of really great shots, like when Sandra comes back to her car and it's literally like vertical somehow. Just like,
yeah.
And anytime we see people in the streets, they're either just like going nuts or they're just trying to tip over cars, which I was just like, hell yeah, that's what I would do too. Try to tip over.
I'm not that strong.
That bus, it took like 30 people and it still wasn't going over. I was like, I would love to see how this is going to turn out. No, he never.
They also moved that car so fast to a different location because she's like, I don't think she's shopping for that long inside the pharmacy. Then she just comes out. It's a completely different location. It's vertical, like you said.
I don't know. They could have like broken the window and put it in neutral or something. I don't know.
You know what?
Probably.
There we go.
There we go.
I wasn't quibbling. I was just like, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Like it's.
Yeah. Also love the shot of when Don McKellar's trying to hotwire a car and Sandra Oh's face is framed within the opening
like
of the
his
steering
knee.
wheel. Yeah,
that's an unusual choice. I'm still not sure entirely what the motivation behind that was, but it was distinctive.
She's also talking about her personal life in a way that almost magnifies like the focus on her while he's still being so closed off. And then it cuts back to, not like we're getting too much into plot, but it does, he's doing it for like a good 45 seconds and then she looks at him and goes, "You have no idea how to do this, do you?" And he's like, no. Yeah, like, so I thought that was a really fascinating visual choice of like, she's being completely open and honest. And then it just like, but he's in the forefront of the frame and it's just like, no, it's really easy. There's like wires under here or something. And it's just like,
what do you do with those wires?
Dude, you're full of shit, aren't you? Yeah. Like,
I thought of a scene in Live Free or Die Hard where, like, which is like 9 years later or whatever, where like Justin Long like has to like calls like some emergency number and they start the car for him rather than hotwiring. I'm like, oh, anyways, that was just like the thing. I'm like, guess that's somebody that I gotta like keep on my back pocket if I ever need to hotwire a car or like steal.
Oh dear.
Anyways, sorry Kevin, I'm interrupting.
No. I don't have much to say. But funny thing about Justin Long, I've seen like 5 trailers of movies that he's in coming up, and I was just like, are we getting a Justin Long renaissance? Is that what's happening? Have the Mac checks cleared up and he needs to go back to acting? I don't know.
Look, anything to get Jimmy Fallon out of the way in order to give Justin Long more credit. Jesus Christ.
But yeah, like I dig the setting of it all. I'm always a fan of, even though it's not technically a Millennium Y2K type movie, but it's made around that time. So, but in any of those types, and I'm also excited to watch some of those other movies that were supposed to be a part of the 2000 scene by, like the Hal Harley movie and The Hole and stuff like that I just never heard of. I'm just like, yeah, give me all the late 90s paranoia about the Millennium movies. Give me all that. But yeah, definitely not the worst, but it was a perfectly fine time. As much as I'm gonna get shit for it, did not like it as much as Dogma. So yes,
wild, absolutely wild.
Dogma, great movie. Let's get
one of those. Is, I also think, to your credit, Kevin, I think it also is just like they're two completely different types of senses of humor, and I personally find yeah.
You remember that scene where Sandra Oh was just talking about how Weird Science is PG, but it shows nudity, but not enough nudity? You remember that?
Did you find this movie funny though? Just genuinely, like out of curiosity.
I'm trying to think. Maybe Cronenberg just existing in a movie is kind of funny.
And playing a normie, like when he makes just like such fucked up movies, is like very funny.
I just
also I'm stupid, and it took me like a long time to figure out that he was married to Sandra.
No, I didn't figure that out either. No.
Oh, it's meant to be like a delayed thing.
Yeah. Oh, definitely a delayed thing. No, you're not stupid at all. I remember.
I think pretty much everybody in this movie has like a delayed like kind of reveal, like when it's
Yeah.
revealed with Don McKellar's character and then Sandra Oh's character, and then I guess Tracy Wright's thing is just like she's a virgin. That's her reveal.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of knows each other too. And like it's like one part of Toronto where like everyone kind of runs into each other and knows each other. Like it's like, oh, I went to high school with you and all that. And it's
Yeah.
Isn't that just Canada?
I mean, Toronto's a pretty big city. I feel like that's like the like it's like one of the biggest places in Canada and everything. But it's like, I don't know. I guess I mean, like Don McKellar says that like that when like people visited TIFF and anything who weren't like from Canada, like it was like, wow, you all like know each other and hang out. Most people like who like in our place, like we just stab each other in the back or whatever. That was like his point and everything. Like the idea of like friendship in the film community was it seemed like a very distinctly Canadian thing. But
Toronto only has a population of 6.3 million, so I'm pretty sure you could know everybody. But whatever, it's like Cheers but Canadian.
So many deliveries in this movie just made me cackle. Like even Don McKellar coming to the fake Christmas party at the beginning, and Sarah Pauli's like boyfriend who's been in and out of the situation was just like, he's just like, hey, didn't know that you'd be back. I mean, you've been kind of like in and out of our house. And she just goes, Patrick, shut up. like just like, and when it's like a really sad scene because you don't even fully understand the context as to why Sandra Oh is like crying, like calling her husband and can't get a hold of him, and she's like, can I just wait here until he calls back? And he just goes, would you like a magazine or something? Like as if it's a waiting room. It's so dark, but it is like he's just so clammed up and it's just like the world is ending, and you can tell he's already wounded, but you don't know why, and he's like, I can't afford to convey any sense of vulnerability because everyone is vulnerable right now, but I need to protect myself. And that's the other thing that I also like about it is that everyone is most people are entirely selfish in how they want to spend the end of the world, even though it revolves around quote unquote connecting with other people, which is why I think the Sandra Oh character is so emotionally is so much the heart of the film, is that she's genuinely like, even though it's revealed her character has made a very good connection with I'll stop there. Sorry.
No, it's good. I also do think like that the movie really gets the sense of like the sort of absurdity of like trying to maintain social niceties in like these like very trying times where like it's almost like like would you like a magazine? It's like these are like the kind of niceties that you would say like in like regular times, but it's like it just like sounds like completely alien like in these times. Like I love I mean, I've criticized this section of the movie a lot, but I do love it when Don McKellar says farewell to Callum Keith Rennie. He says like, I'm gonna see ya, and then Callum Keith Rennie's like, no, you won't. And it's like, it's very dark. It's really funny, but it's also, but it's like also like very haunting, where like it just kind of lingers on him, like just sort of like slumped over, like in like the hallway and everything, being left alone, and like that long shot. It's like it's really kind of haunting, but also like very funny because it's like, that doesn't work. It doesn't make sense anymore. Like the thing that you
it really doesn't. Yeah, all of our societal norms are just like laid to waste.
Let's get into the plot. All right. In Toronto, a group of friends and family prepare for the end of the world, expected at midnight as the result of a calamity that is not explained, but which has been expected for several months. There's been panic and rioting after the imminent catastrophe was announced, but the chaos has since largely died down, with only sporadic murders, robberies, and incidents of vandalism. Only sporadic murders, yeah. Why don't you relax? It's not like the Purge or anything. As humanity accepts that Earth's demise is going to happen. On the last evening, Sandra's car is vandalized by passerbyers. Whoever did this Wikipedia, I'm just going to read it straight. It seems like they did not spell check it or anything like that. Is vandalized by passerby while she scavenges leftovers in a supermarket, leaving her stranded. This is bad.
The empty supermarket shelves, that feels like a very resonant image now.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Having lived through the last couple of years. It's like, woof, it's too familiar.
I was surprised that there was bottles of wine left, and she had a variety. She could choose between two. Yeah, I was surprised.
That's a good point.
That. Meanwhile, Patrick meets with his extended family for a mock Christmas dinner celebration. Duncan, husband of Sandra, David Cronenberg, spends most of the day calling his customers to reassure them that their heating gas will be kept on until the very end. Craig is having sex with Lily as a part of his plan to mark every sexual milestone he can think of before the end. The funniest thing about that, which it's kind of down there, where he's just like, what about bestiality? He's like, whoa, only stuff I want to do. I'm not trying to do everything.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is like a thing you can like freeze frame where like it does get like occasional like insert close-ups of like all the different items on the list. And it's like pregnant woman giving a blowjob or something like that. And it's like just like, oh my gosh, like it's
just like Mad
so
Libs.
outlandish.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, that reveal, that's like something out of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Oh my gosh.
She's like, look, my kitchen. I've been writing on it for months. And you're just like, all right, later. Yeah.
Or like the scene in Burn After Reading where George Clooney reveals the dildo chair that he's got like, in his basement or whatever.
Yeah. Patrick leaves the dinner prematurely to spend his final hours alone in his apartment. However, he unexpectedly meets Sandra at his front door. After Sandra begs him for help, Patrick reluctantly lets her in to use his phone to contact Duncan. Patrick then suggests Sandra steal a car after she leaves his apartment. Meanwhile, Craig and Miss Carlton are having sex. Carlton is his childhood French teacher, and Donna turns up the music and lets go of herself in the power company after Duncan is left. Okay, this plot
like
synopsis is all over.
Gliding over a lot.
I know.
My word.
Yeah, I mean, do we want to hit on some of these scenes? Because some of them are
Yeah.
really good. I mean, the Christmas scene is like really fucking sad. I mean, like how it just like, I mean, yeah, Charlie, the line that Sarah Polley got me with like in that scene was when it's like, yeah, Patrick, you have to use the bag or whatever, when like throwing out the wrapping or whatever, because he wants to throw it into the fire, but it's like a fake fire or whatever. And she's like, yeah, use the bag, Patrick. It's like that sort of like ribbing, like sort of sibling rivalry felt very.
And the scene where they're all sitting down to eat, and their mom starts crying, and then Sarah Polley's just like, food's gonna get cold.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's like not like a. Like the crying is like sadder and harder to take because it is like just like kind of like a high pitched one. You're just like where it is like it is like it goes on for so long, but it's also like so quiet and everything that it kind of like just like it's like, oh gosh, I don't like to sit in this. But yeah, I mean that's like, I mean that whole family dynamic feels so lived in. It's like, you know, you're gonna enjoy this food and you'll remember how much your mother loved you and how you didn't appreciate it. Or whatever. Like, geez, like, like on the passive aggression that family members can have, and like, even expressing love for each other felt very true.
But I also love how ambiguous it was, where it didn't get into a scene where they have a screaming match about what explicitly made them turn against each other. It just
it's all
is.
under the surface.
It also made me think of, and this it's like, and oddly enough, this being a 1998 movie just made me think of like parents like still sheltering their children from real world horrors even if they're adults. I remember I was not an adult, but when September 11th happened, I remember being 10 years old and coming off the bus stop, and my dad was there, and then he explained what happened, turned on the TV, and then my mom was like, all right, kids, time for swim lessons. And we were like, we don't want to go to swim lessons. And they were like, nope, we got to go to swim lessons. And then brought us into a pool full of other kids who were all like, why the fuck are we still here? And all the parents just kind of like silently like gathering around, whispering to each other, and just like that, nope, we got to embrace tradition. We got to keep pretending like everything's normal, which is what the whole movie felt like to me, was that one day being like 10 years old and being like, this is not okay right now. But then as I'm older, like understanding why parents did those sort of things, to just feel like, okay, we just need to pretend it's fine. Like, and so like this whole movie kind of made me feel that way, but especially that opening scene where the parents are like, can't you just pretend like it's fine? And everyone kind of silently being like, okay, sure, let's keep going with this. And then
How long were you in the pool until they were like, all right, everybody out, Jesse Bradford has to do laps? What was that?
The body in the pool. We gotta get a body out of the pool.
That's a Strangers with Candy joke too, the one where she falls in love with the blind kid and they're just okay, everybody out, dead body in the pool.
Oh my gosh, that's, you know what, maybe that's what was subconsciously lodged in my brain. I think you described that scene to me.
Oh, it's great. But yeah, it is that kind of thing where it did make me think about like where I was like all the time during like, I mean, I was also part of the Boston. Jesus, I was also, in Boston when the Boston Marathon bombing happened, like, and like that sort of stuff where it's just like, just go about everything's like, you know, obviously the city wasn't like that, but we all had to pretend like, yep, we just got to keep going like everything will be fine. Don't show any sort of vulnerability or you'll be seen as weak, kind of like pressure from society in those types of ways that are just like throughout that week, because the Boston Marathon bombing also, you had the day, then you had all of us mourning, and then you had the, okay, we're like coping, and then like, oh, never mind, there's a manhunt on the way 2 days later, where it was just like, and all of us are just like, we can't just pretend like this is all normal. But like seeing like this done with like, yeah, just awkward deliveries and dark comedy, like I find that at least very cathartic to see on screen, even for a fictionalized representation of a fake apocalypse.
Oh yeah,
sure.
that was me working for Amazon once the pandemic started, and literally I felt like the only person that was just like, you know, like shit's wild out here, right? And everybody was just business as usual. And I had to be like, you know, we're supposed to do things differently, and they're just like, yeah. And I'm just like, okay, I guess it's just me, I guess. All right. Anyways, that's a long rabbit hole to go down because that's all fresh in our memory. But Patrick meets his high school friend Menzies, who is driving around to give out tickets to his concert with his cousin. While I do like the scene where he's just like, "Hey, show him the tux we got," and he just like hangs it out the window. It's very funny.
Oh yeah, and there's also that line that was like, "Oh man, you're so lucky you ran into us today." And Don McKellar goes, "Yeah, maybe."
That's incredible. He really nails that line reading. It's
so funny. Where you just like, it's like, it would be funny even in a scenario where the world wasn't ending, but you just bump into someone that you're just not wanting to interact with, and they're just kind of like, "Hey, we got this thing going on. Why don't you show up?" And you're just kind of like trying to hide the fact that you have other things that are preoccupied at the moment. And you're kind of like, "Oh,
yeah." And he's like, it took me this long to get booked," and it's just like, maybe there's a reason it took you this long to get booked.
Well, yeah, he says like, "Whoa, we all knew you had it, didn't you?" Just like sort of like so insincere, but just like I can't. I have to save face and like, you know,
well, like
play nice.
Even at like minuscule things, like I was working bar at the Coolidge the other day, and like I came back from the bathroom and someone was like, "By the way, I gave this customer your name who was waiting for you." And they were like, "Charlie." I'm like, "Hi." Like, and they were like, "I'm this," like, I don't even remember their name, but they were like, "I like to call people on first name basis. I've been here before. I've seen you around." And I'm like, okay. Like, it's like that type of thing where it's like, I don't know who you are, but now I have to pretend that, like, we're friends or something. Like, it's that type of, like, weird social obligation of, like, if I push back in any way that shows discomfort, I'm the asshole, but you are the one that is pushing my boundaries. And like,
weird.
It's like the scene. Yeah. It's like the scene in or the running joke in Something Wild where like Jeff Daniels keeps calling all the employers by their first name or whatever to make things friendly. That's like
that is exactly what that is.
Fire it.
Exactly what that is. And it happens so often just in like service jobs that I'm just like, yeah, like, anyway. Yeah.
That's terrifying. Later, Patrick, while visiting Craig in his apartment, convinces Craig to lend him his car despite his reluctancy, because Craig says that I need to die with a collection of cars, and having 2 cars means I just died with 2 cars.
Oh god, yeah.
After Sandra leaves, Craig tries to convince Patrick to enjoy sex in the final hours and discloses his omnisexual approach to addressing all of his fantasies before the end. Craig later tells Patrick that he is not belittling Patrick, but trying to inspire him to enjoy his final hours. While Patrick is leaving Craig's apartment, Craig attempts to have a homosexual affair with him, but he refuses despite his love for Craig.
That's a homosexual weird way to phrase that. Yeah, homosexual affair. Yeah, that's what I do.
How is it an affair? Both of them are
intimate.
single.
Whenever I have a date with someone I met on the internet, my roommate's like, "What are you up tonight?" And I go, "I have a homosexual affair I have to get to." And they go, "Good for you." I know that you have all expressed, look, I don't think he's the strongest part of the movie, but the character of Craig, I mean, maybe it's just me being a queer cinephile, but there is something about how the camera holds on him, and in that entire sequence of just trying to, like, because as soon as he showed in the closet, I was, with all the listings, I was like, okay, I see where this is going. And, but especially based on what we know, then is it like, and again, it's ambiguous. It's not meant to push it one way or the other, but I was just like, he loves this guy that he used to live with. Like, even if it's platonic, I mean, there is something about the ways in which he's trying to connect with either complete strangers or people that he did know at one point. Like, Don McKellar is clearly the person he knows the most out of all the people he's having sex with, and I felt like there was a sense of longing that he wanted to have. And it was also very funny, I will say, Don McKellar just being like, look, if you at least gave me some time, like, if you reached out to me, like, a little while ago, or I had more time to, like, contemplate how I would feel after this, like, there was a sense of bittersweetness I felt to that is very funny, as someone who's had unrequited crushes on straight friends, even though I'm not even arguing that the character of Craig is queer, but it is a possibility. Like, especially knowing what comes down the line in the movie, that was something that did hit kind of close to home to me, even if I'm imprinting my own experiences onto that character, if that makes any sense.
No, I mean, I don't have any problems with, like, the way that scene's written. I think it's actually beautifully written, and I think McKellar plays it very well, where he is being gentle, but then also, even when they're sharing the kiss, you can see his eyes are just sort of darting. It's like, okay, where's the exit? I need to get out of here.
What's the line? He's like, I just can't risk having bad sex at the
that's so good.
Because if I die at the end of the world and I just think about the last time I had sex was just not good. It's just like, and I hate, there's a part of me that, like, is like, dude, you're being so superficial, like, just give him, like just try it. But there's another part of me that's like, a part of me might be that selfish, I don't know what would happen. And I hate how that movie, how it is like I'm not saying, like, it is that weird thing where I put myself in both characters' shoes, where I was just like, I mean, they both have a point. Like,
yeah, I think Rennie, though, like, I mean, it is, like, I was trying to remember, like, what exactly the line reading that kind of graded for me, where he's just like, when was the last time you got? And then he just, like, takes, like, a long pause, and he's like, some. And I'm like, okay, like, you're not, like, the rhythm of that is, like, just, like, it just feels like a bad choice that doesn't pay off. Whereas I feel like McKellar, even though it is, like, kind of an odd rhythm that he has, like, with sort of, like, the lilting line deliveries and sort of, like, the monotone voice, it is, like, I feel like that is, like, a deliberate choice that pays off, especially near the end of the movie, when he sort of, like, lets a mask fall.
That's funny to me, because I did not think Don McKellar was good in this, but the first half, the stiltedness of it, it worked for me. But then when it got more serious, I began being like, I don't know, buddy. I don't know if you're this.
It worked for me throughout, because I was just like, oh, this is just, like, a protective shell. Like, you are so, and based on, and to be fair, the film is structured in a way that, like, it is revealed why he's acting this way, but it is a consistent sense of monotonous, reflective, or deflective, sense of just, I want to do what I want to do today. And you are kind of like, but yeah, like, I think that it all makes sense when it gets to what we know his character has been through, and it works both comically and dramatically for me up until that point. And maybe it is because he has a knack for playing that type of character. I mean, Exotica, even though he's openly gay in that film, he kind of does similar things in his deliveries and his kind of, because he, in Exotica, he also has a secret. So, like, I think he's particularly good in that. And then it's also funny when you think about, like, his collaborations with Cronenberg. Existence, he has that ridiculous accent. And then Crimes of the Future, it's almost like a combination of the two, without the accent. But yeah, anyway.
In the final hour, Duncan opens the door upon hearing a gunshot on the street, only to be held hostage by Marty. Do we know the guy's name? I feel like
I think it is. I think his girlfriend's saying, like, Marty, let's go, all right? Like, she's like, just sort of like very, like, kind of like, oh, like, just like impatient, but not even like that.
And she's treating it as if he wants to go get, like, a big gulp at 7-Eleven or something. Like,
come on, we're gonna be late. Like, no. I gotta shoot the motherfucker that made Shivers. Get out of here.
Yeah, that's a really well shot scene though, where like it is like this creepiness where he's like, it's just backing, like, following him as he's backing away into the darkness, and then cutting away from the murder. It's like just a visual suggestion of, like, him, like, receding into the darkness and dying is, like, without showing it, is, like, really powerful.
Yeah, we don't even know if he's dead for a good 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really good, and he plays it so well too. Where he is,
Yeah,
like,
he's
very,
like, he
"I'm
was
not afraid
like,
of you."
you're scared. I'm not scared.
I could completely, and I know I'm not even going to get into specifics because we've been talking for a while, but like you think about current events where people have guns, especially white males have guns, and yeah, it couldn't help but think about how.
Wait, which incident in particular are you talking about? You're only talking about one incident, right?
Yeah, just one.
Oh, okay.
We don't have a gun problem in this country. Wait, Bryden, as a spokesperson for all Canadians, you can also agree
Hell
with
yeah.
that. Yeah.
The CEO of Tim Hortons himself. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that the movie does get at the mindset of, like, sort of like white adolescent male rage, where it's like, well, like, I get it. I just want to, like, just like blow off some steam. Like, that's Sarah Pauli's boyfriend, and he's the one who attacks this guy with the shovel, and it's like, but it's still very polite, where he's like, she's like, I have a gun, and she's like, okay, take care of it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that too,
Yeah.
because like he is actually, well, what's funny is that scene comes before what we're talking about with Marty and the shotgun too. Is like, you think initially he's the one who's just like, hey, she said she doesn't want a party or something, and it is kind of like, okay, good. But then I do kind of love that Sandra Oh's just like, I can take care of myself. Are you sure? I have a gun. Like, oh, okay, sorry.
The fact that he had a shovel out of nowhere.
It also didn't take me until he sat next to Sarah Pauli. I was like, oh shit, that's the boyfriend who she brought to Christmas. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought the movie actually did a really good job of slyly revealing that, and maybe that's my own stupidity, but like I feel like it, in terms of revealing its various layers about various characters, I thought that was pretty clever. So
for sure.
Oh yeah. Where are we? In the concert that only a few people attended, Miss Carlton quietly walks in while Minzy plays piano poorly on the stage. Sandra is stopped by a group of protesters who block traffic and vandalize her car. Sandra then returns to Patrick's apartment. Using Patrick's phone, Sandra listens to Duncan's voicemail in which he's assured his power company customers that the gas will be run until the end. And yeah, I think even at that point I didn't know that Cronenberg was the husband.
That's when I put it together.
I was starting to, but I was just like, I thought she was upset because it was full. So if he called, she wouldn't have known. But she's actually sad because, yeah, that's him. Upon realizing she will not reunite with Duncan because this is the last hour, Sandra asks Patrick to join in on her suicide pact, which she had with Duncan. Patrick initially refuses, stating that he needs to know her more and to find a reason to love her in order to consider it. So they share their stories, slowly progressing into a serious topic that Patrick's lover died of sickness. That's really all we know. As midnight approaches, Craig meets with Donna, which is the woman that Cronenberg works with, and finds it difficult to believe that she is a virgin. Donna finds herself ashamed, but Craig successfully turns the situation around and they have sex. The AI robot that wrote this. While Patrick and Sandra makes their final attempt to contact Duncan, it is revealed that Duncan was killed by a mob. I was telling in the group chat earlier that if you make a movie in Canada, you have to contact David Cronenberg, and if he wants to be in it, cool, but if he wants to be in it, he has to be murdered, like, terribly. He's like, yeah, I'll be in Jason X, but I have to be impaled.
Yeah, and if it takes place in America or any other country, he has to murder.
Right.
Yeah. But like, yeah, I'll be in Nightbreed, but I have to be the killer. And they're just like, all right.
To cool. Die for.
Yeah.
I
then
better
the
be the
middle,
one. Yeah, who
and then the healthy middle is Disappearance of Clifton Hill, where he plays a scuba diving podcaster. So that's like,
what?
It's like a movie about like some mystery like at Niagara Falls, and he's like the guy who's like, diving like for clues in like the water or whatever, and then he's like saying like, oh, I have a true crime podcast that like talks all about this.
I would love to listen to Cronenberg's true crime podcast.
He's a good voice for podcasting. Very soothing.
Oh man, that'd be great. Just imagine listening to an audiobook that's like a really lighthearted rom-com type book, but it's narrated by Cronenberg, and you're like, where is this gonna turn? When Patrick and Sandra make their final attempt to contact Duncan, it is revealed that Duncan was killed by the mob. I already said that. Patrick and Sandra both sit on the roof facing each other, listening to the song, I'm gonna butcher this, Guantanamera. Yeah. Each holding a loaded pistol to each other's temple. However, as the final seconds approach, both characters, overwhelmed with emotion, lower their pistols and slowly embrace in a kiss as it fades to white. The end.
And you just hear their lips touching, basically, and them breathing. And it's like just, oh, gosh, it's so great. I mean,
And
like
me
I said, 'cause,
sobbing.
like the rest of it.
Me sobbing. You could hear.
I
that.
did
there you
hear
go.
that.
Yeah.
I heard that from a few
All the
states
way
away.
from Boston. It's
Yeah.
so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna do a bit where it's just like, when did you watch Dogma? Oh, last night. No. When did you watch Dogma? I'm talking about Dogma. No, I watched it last night. Who's on second? Yeah.
I will say I found, and I not to go back to The Leftovers, but it's another show that did this really well. I love that we find out pretty much earlier on, like maybe an hour before this, but Sandra Oh fell in love. She talks about how she had a previous husband, and then their new husband, David Cronenberg, as we soon find out, they met the night that the government closed. And so they were able to find a connection in the midst of this collective trauma, and she's like, no, we genuinely fell in love, and this trauma like brought us together. And then at the same time, Don McKellar, it's the exact opposite, where he's like, yeah, she died, and then it was announced that the world was going to end. And there's a character in The Leftovers who I will not spoil, who faces something similar in terms of losing a loved one, and then when it comes to the rest of the world facing grief, it's like her singular grief is kind of erased because it doesn't matter anymore because everyone else is coping with something else, so she can't even connect with the rest of the world. Kind of like how I feel like why Don McKellar is putting up such an affront in this nonchalant, like, whatever, you know, I just want to do my own thing, because I found the opposites attract dynamic between these two kind of beautiful, honestly, that, like, you know, and it's clear that, like, I think Sandra Oh is very genuine in, like, how she is able to fall in love with people very easily and is able to make human connection, and why Don McKellar's own personal sense of loss is a way for him to want to shut down, and the way Sandra Oh wins him over in the midst of all of this, because I don't think it's fake. I think it's very easy to be a cynic and just be like, well, Sandra Oh is just making connections with these people because she's desperate in one sense, but it's like, no, I think that she's genuinely just an empath trying to connect with humanity when it faces just inevitable.
I think it just shows how easy it is to make a deep connection with people if you just try.
Yeah, and
are forced to be so direct with each other in
Yeah.
these times, where they no bullshit.
And yeah, exactly. Which, I mean, again, like, having lived through the pandemic, I mean, there are tons of people that, like, I did not speak to for several years that I reconnected with once it felt like the world was on fire. And now, even though it seems like we're slowly starting to crawl out of it somewhat, we're still, like, really good friends. And there are, from a personal perspective, many the biggest silver linings of the pandemic are, like, frankly, just reconnecting with those people. And also, we were all, God, I'm getting sappy, but we didn't know each other before the pandemic. Like, we all got
Thank God for the pandemic. That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
oh my
thank
gosh.
God,
Kevin, I've thought that so many times.
But I am just saying that maybe this is just the softy in me that is just like, there, you know, it's an end of the world movie where it is bleak and, like, everyone dies, but it is like there are some optimistic sides of humanity even in the midst. I think it does a great job of evening out. Here's humanity at its worst, here's humanity at its best. Isn't it funny how we interact with people in certain ways, and isn't it kind of moving that, like, in the most desperate of times we can still find connection even when we're hesitant to do so. And sometimes, yeah, like, this sort of stuff brings us together, which, again, I genuinely, it's fascinating to me, Bryden, that you watched it pre-pandemic and now in the midst of it, and you liked it better. And I'm curious, not to completely
Psychoanalyze him. It's because of the pandemic.
Psychoanalyze you, but I couldn't help but think of it at the time.
Oh, I imagine. I mean, the thing I mentioned, I think, when you just went away briefly, was I mentioned the shopping mart scene where, like, the empty shelves. It's like, that feels like an image that is, like, kind of, like, representative of, like, the era that we're in now. Yeah, I don't know. And it's just also, I don't know. I think it was just maybe knowing it's, like, sort of, like, rhythms a little bit more, both, like, dialogue in terms of pacing, maybe being more prepared for that, and then, like, sort of, like, looking at what's underneath that. I think maybe my willingness to do that was maybe made it a bit better. Also, watching it for this podcast, which I enjoy doing in my free time, versus watching it for a class I had to take for school, I think
I don't know. It's still homework. Both.
You were watching it and you're like, fuck, I should have chose Chloe.
I did choose Chloe. I didn't. The one I should have chosen was probably the Rosamund one, which I still haven't seen. But yeah. Anyways, one other thing. I think you summed the movie up beautifully with like that point. One other thing that I wanted to mention was just like a fun little tidbit, just like fun trivia connections, was the guy who's the DJ on the radio announcing all the counting down the top 100 or some odd songs or whatever is Tom McKellar, who plays Sarah Pauli's dad in The Sweet Hereafter. He's very funny in this though, where he's like, we're doing the top 500 songs according to me, right? It's me, right? Yeah, okay, cool. They just like it goes back into his routine. I don't know. It's again like another instance of the movie, like sort of like where it's like trying to maintain this very like strict order of things, and then just sort of like the humanity, like just an individual personality breaking out. It's like, wait, why am I doing it like this? Whatever. I guess I'll just keep up.
The news guy who's just broadcasting by himself the news.
Man, that's so creepy. With
There's
the empty news.
There's even a new sketch on the recent reboot of Kids in the Hall where there's like it's like an apocalyptic DJ, but he's like underground and it's like very like brown and orange and like pipes are leaking and there's clearly no food and he's just like, and coming up, I've got a brand new pair of roller skates, and it just I got a brand new pair of roller skates, and it's just like a shot of him just like slowly melting, like, and it is so funny.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at Kev Bonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at J Doyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CT Nash91. Once again, thank you for listening.